Hello everyone, welcome to the EU Reviews Visual Showcase. I am of course your host, Nathan P. Butler. This is coming to you on the Facebook page for the EU Review and on our new YouTube channel, youtube.com/TheEUReview, all is one word if you haven't checked that out yet. If you're a big Star Wars fan like those of us behind the scenes at the EU Review, you have probably been following The Clone Wars as it's been airing on Cartoon Network. And frankly, if you haven't been checking them out on Blu-ray, you really should, because this really is the way to see it. The picture is absolutely amazing, as is the sound on Blu-ray. But if you've been following that, then you might be sitting back thinking, I've heard there's this US version of what began as a UK magazine, The Clone Wars, and it's put out by Titan, the same people who do Star Wars Insider. Maybe I should check that out. Well, that's what this visual showcase is going to try to determine for you, whether or not that is really worth your money or not. Okay? So, let's take a step back here and take a look at some of the other oddball items that might be compared to this. If you had subscribed years ago to Scholastic's Star Wars Missions series, sort of a kids RPG, something we are going to take a look at later on in another visual showcase, then as you were getting the books, like this one, this is number 1, Assault on Yavin 4 by Ryder Wyndham, as you got these, you also would have gotten Star Wars Kids. This is number 1. This may look a little bit different than what you may have as a number 1 if you were picking them up on the newsstand, because they were different editions as they were put out through Star Wars Missions. But this is a very kiddie type of book, lots of little puzzles and such. There are some text articles, but there's just not a whole lot to this particular magazine. Then, they sort of repeated the same cycle when they came out with Episode 1 Adventures. This is the first of those, Search for the Lost Jedi. That started out another round of Star Wars Kids, also starting back with issue number 1. But again, very similar goofy little kids content inside. Same thing happened again later, Star Wars Adventures. This is the one that was taking place prior to Episode 2. This is Hunt the Sunrunner, and it brought with it Star Wars Adventures. Yes, that's right, we had Star Wars Adventures, these books, Star Wars Adventures, these, and the newer comic book series. Not that there's any reason to confuse the three. Very different, but same title. So, we've seen sort of little kiddie stuff, but it was marketed as kids stuff. It's a kids game, so it's got kids magazines with it. That makes a bit of sense. Many of us have been following Star Wars in recent years through the pages of Star Wars Insider, especially now that they finally have fiction returning to the series. This happens to be issue number 126. This is the one that 124. I reference this frequently on Republic Forces Radio Network simply because this is the one where Ahsoka is covered in dust. I said this is the one where either she's been fighting some Trandoshans or she's been partying too much with Charlie Sheen. But we're used to this magazine. Adult-style articles. It's not like they go really in-depth, but they're interesting, behind-the-scenes stuff, lots of prose materials, a variety of sections, but pretty chock full of content, even if that content is not necessarily everybody's cup of tea every particular release. A lot of people have been thinking, well, what's the Clone Wars magazine like? Is it more like those little kiddie ones, or is it more like Star Wars Insider? I want to subscribe to something that's maybe more like Star Wars Insider, or maybe what Star Wars Insider could be if it was beefed up a little bit. Well, this is, as the time of this recording, the latest issue. This is issue number 6 of Star Wars The Clone Wars magazine. Okay, first of all, you'll notice it's got the address label on here. When you subscribe to the Clone Wars magazine, it comes with the label on it, and it's not in a bag or anything. It's in there like this. Insider comes in a bag, the label's on the bag, so your Insider issue doesn't have any little sticky labels on it. Not the case for the Clone Wars. Okay, same publishing company, but it's sent out a different way through Express Mag, I believe. All right. So what are you going to get in an issue like this? You notice it's very bright, blasting cover here. Lots of stuff, the official Clone Wars magazine, win this, win that, all the things that are meant to grab people's attention on the newsstand or elsewhere. What type of things do we have in this? You'll notice, first thing right off the bat, that the look inside, the table of contents, is not really much of a table of contents. It's more, here's some quick pictures, and where are you going to find those? Like you'd often see with magazines where they'd say that on the front and then have like, on page whatever. So, not a very useful table of contents in that sense. And this is a general idea of what these articles will tend to look like. You notice there's a lot of pictures, but rather than having a lot of text, prose text, you instead have sort of expanded captions with each picture. The Kit Fisto one, the Zillow Beast one, you've got Delta Squad over on this side, and so on. You'll actually find that they sometimes contradict the creative team. The creative team, I believe, is at San Diego Comic-Con in 2011, said that no, we would not be seeing Delta Squad, but we would be seeing more Republic Commandos in the series. This has Delta Squad and specifically says they received only the briefest of cameo appearances in Witches of the Mist. But now that these 4 Super Commandos are in the Clone Wars, you can almost bet we'll be seeing a full episode with them before long. And fess up, you can't wait. Okay, well, somebody needs to tell Dave Filoni that, because that sure doesn't seem to be what he said at Comic-Con by all accounts. You'll then have a couple of times in individual issues, and they're not necessarily in this order, but here's an example, comic books. Now here's the thing, these comics, I guess not comic books, comic inserts, usually there's 2 of these per issue, 1 or 2, usually 2. If it's 1, it's usually split in half, a little bit in the front, a little bit in the back. They are usually by Rick Hoskins and other folks who are sort of on the Titan side of things here, not necessarily names you'd recognize from American comics through Dark Horse. This is Titan Comics, essentially. They're not bad. They're usually pretty short. They don't tend to affect all that much. And they are reprints pretty much all the time from what you would see in the UK comics. What they're doing now is slowly catching up with where the UK comics are. So don't expect to have something new and original for the United States, at least not yet. As you're flipping through, you'll also find sweepstakes, contests, okay? To win whatever. There's a sweepstakes in pretty much every single issue here for you. You also will find a bunch of sort of nonsensical articles. I mean, not that they don't make sense, but that there's just not a whole lot to them. Like, oh look, it's all the times that Obi-Wan and General Grievous dueled each other so far. Isn't that nifty? You know, for a kid, that's definitely going to be nifty, and of course us continuity folks can look at it and say, wow, no wonder he wasn't afraid of Grievous in Episode 3, because he'd already kicked his butt so freaking many times. You have puzzle pages, lots of puzzles, you know, word puzzles and stuff like that, you know, nothing too fancy, but they're interesting enough. You have what sort of reminds me of a visual guide, sort of like that character encyclopedia, except for vehicles. They're just quick profiles on those. In the center, you will almost always find some kind of poster, and usually that poster is 2-sided, so if you actually were to pull it out, there'd be another poster on the other side of it. You have character profiles, like this one for R2-D2, very much like the profiles that you have for the vehicles, similar to, but not exactly what you'd see in, say, the Character Encyclopedia by Jason Fry. And then you've got what, other than the comics, are really my favorite part of these magazines, and that's the what-ifs, the Clone Wars Infinities. It even has its own little symbol here, Clone Wars Infinities. Hopefully you can see that clearly enough here. But in this case we have, what if R2 was never found? This jumps off from the events of Downfall of the Droid, Duel of the Droids, says, okay, what if he wasn't found? What if the treacherous droid was never discovered? And it goes through basically a step-by-step process. 1, 2, and then on the other page, 3, 4, 5. And it kind of has a rational spin-off of, okay, he wasn't found, so then this happens, so then this happens, and then this would happen, and this would happen. And kind of takes us through events. And usually it's a pretty dark ending. I mean, not quite as dark as you would say with maybe the old Marvel What If stories, where almost every story ended in doom if things didn't turn out the way they did originally. But it's very similar. And there's usually 1 or 2 of those little what-if articles in each individual issue of the magazine. But really, that's it. That's all there is to the Clone Wars magazine. It's not a bad magazine, but there's not much to it. It's certainly not a Star Wars Insider in terms of the content. You will flip through this thing very, very quickly. As one of my friends is fond of saying, man, that's a 1-bathroom trip bathroom reader right there. Yeah, pretty much. And I'm sure he hates the fact that I just gave him a southern accent. He really doesn't talk like that. But it's one of those things where you might want to purchase it and flip through it because it's got some cool stuff. And if you're a comic collector, that's awesome because you've got these comics that are available nowhere else in the United States. But beyond that, what is there that you're going to find of interest? There's usually not a lot of fun new facts for a big EU reader. So if you're going to buy this, if you're going to subscribe to this series, bear in mind you're probably going to only subscribe because of the comics and the quick, cool little what-ifs. Otherwise, there's probably nothing in these that's going to pique your interest if you are an adult Star Wars fan or an adult EU fan. Now, How much is this going to cost you if you do decide to subscribe to it? Maybe those comics are just too cool to let go. Believe me, they're not. But, if you're a collector, maybe it's just something you just can't let go of, like with me. If you were to buy this series, if you were to buy 6 issues, let's say a year's worth, at newsstand prices, cover price, that's $4.99 per issue. You're going to be spending $29.94 over the course of that year for those 6 issues. If you were to subscribe, then it'd be $3.99 per issue. They take $1 off the price of each, and the subscription price is $23.95. Significantly better deal. You're saving $6, basically, just about. If you were to buy these as back issues, say you were thinking, well, you know what, I'm going to wait. And I'm going to go back, and if I wind up finding that I want to subscribe, I'll subscribe, but then I'll just go back, and if I want to get the whole series, maybe I'll get the first 6, the first 8, the first whatever that I missed, I'll just buy it as back issues off of their website. How bad can it be? Kind of bad, because the back issues tend to run $8.99, okay? That is $5 more than each issue if you subscribed, okay? And that is $4 more than each issue if you bought it on the newsstand? If you were to buy all 6, a full year's worth, as back issues, you're looking at $53.94, okay? A huge jump from the $23.95 if you had subscribed. So here's my advice. Now thinking about what I've described to you as what are the more valuable components of this for someone who is an EU fan. If you want to subscribe, go ahead and do it. But if you're going to go to a newsstand, I wouldn't go to the newsstand to buy. I would go to the newsstand to flip through and see if it's something you might be interested in. Then, if you're interested, go ahead and subscribe. What I would not do is try to go with back issues, at least not the official channels. Maybe look on eBay or something like that. Do not try to go through Titan magazines to get the back issues because they are incredibly overpriced. On the other hand, if it's something that you don't see is very much of interest to you, just the comics maybe, you know what? This is something you can easily pass by, easily forget about, without having it truly affect your expanded universe enjoyment. There's just not much there, as the old saying goes. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope you'll keep up with the visual showcase for the EU review, and of course, the series itself over at solosound.net. Good night, everybody.